which brings us to a DHCP relay. So again, I think I actually used the same exact images in the superscopes for Windows DHCP. So remember that your DHCP packets cannot travel across a router. Okay, so a relay agent is necessary. A relay agent is necessary in order to have a single DHCP server handle all leases on both network segments. In this particular case, I have a router that's connecting two different networks. Okay, I have my DHCP server is on subnet 1. Okay, there is no DHCP server on subnet 2. So my router, regardless of what type of device that is, whether it's a server that's functioning as a router, whether it's an actual router, my router has to be can be configured as a relay agent by actually enabling it for DHCP boot P. Okay, and that basically would mean that now, and when you configure that, you actually configure within the settings the IP address of the DHCP server, so a hard configuration of the IP address of the DHCP server that relay agent is going to communicate with. So now your clients on subnet 2 are sending out their Discover packets. The router's DHCP relay agent services hears that, takes that request, forwards it to the DHCP server that it's configured to use. DHCP server responds to the relay agent sends the IP addresses back to the clients. Okay, so otherwise, Discover packets do not cross routers, so these computers can be calling all day, sending out Discover packets all day. If there's no relay agent configured on the router to allow that packet through, the clients would never receive IP addresses from a DHCP server. So that concept is no different on Linux as it is than on Windows. The DHCP relay agent is actually called DHCP relay. And you could install it and configure it with Zipper. You would never install a relay agent on an actual DHCP server. Hopefully it makes sense. It does allow you to relay DHCP requests from one subnet to another. And I think I've already said all this. Again, the DHCP relay could be installed with Zipper, and then the agent, you would actually type DHC relay followed by the IP address of the server that you want this relay agent to communicate with. So again, you are directly connecting that relay agent to a DHCP server. The relay agent isn't sending out a broadcast and saying, hey, is there a DHCP server that can communicate with me? It's a hard static configuration between the two machines.
So you install this service on the router?
On the router. Well, it would be on the router. Of course, if it's this command, that router is an OpenSUSE machine, right? Okay? So there would be a way to enable that on a router like Viator or an actual Cisco router. Okay? There would be a way to enable that particular service, okay, on that router. And of course, it would not be on our servers because our servers are going to be DHCP servers, and you would never connect it, provide that service. Same thing with Windows. Same concept with Windows. You know, I think if we look back at the Windows lecture, I went over how to do it on a server. But again, you wouldn't put it on the same machine that's functioning as your DHCP server. And if you're not using your server as a router, then the commands and the interface really will be driven by the device that you're using. Same concepts with, they're called single subnets and shared networks. And notice I've got AKA scope, super scope I should say. So again, the graphic images here, guys, are no different than the ones I used in 231. So if I go back to, this slide, I remind you that in this particular case, we have one physical network, okay? We have one logical subnet, and we have one DHCP server. Okay, so the single range is used to service all DHCP clients on the subnet. Okay, I do not need, and this is what it would look like in the conf file. Okay, the shared network where I have multiple, so this is a shared network. You actually have shared network as an entry in the conf file. Okay, followed by the name that you want to assign it, something original like shared. Okay, and then each subnet. Okay, so I've got subnet 192.168.1. .10 to 254.2, again 10 to 254.3, 10 10 to 254. So in this example, I have one physical network segment, and I have 3 logical subnets. Okay, so 1 physical, 3 logical, 3 separate subnets can be shared, which is where the shared configuration comes into place, and therefore the DHCP services, all clients on subnet A with an IP address would get an IP address from the shared network. Okay, so that every computer on this would just get an IP address that's available, one IP address from any one of these subnets. Okay, so again, the router would have to be configured with multiple addresses to allow the packets to move from one logical network to another. So you would have to have 3 adapters on that router that allowed the communication between the subnets. Okay? Is that the last slide? That's the last slide. Okay, so again, we could look at, you could do this from within your .conf file, so I could open the .conf file and actually make that manual configuration and actually check the syntax and restart. You could also do it from the GUI, and I'm going to opt to do it from the GUI simply because I want to show you that, actually, if I did it from the, I'm going to do it from the, I want to see what happens, okay? Because this is considered an expert setting. Okay, so again, right now, if I open YAST, let me show you in YAST. If I open YAST and I go to Network Services and I go to DHCP, there's now options within our dynamic DHCP here that allow us to add another subnet. Okay, but there is something called expert settings. And so and this pretty much says, if you enter the expert settings, you cannot return to this dialog. So in other words, the whole interface is going to change once you enter expert settings. Okay, I'm just going to do it this way. What I wanted to test was, in the past, depending on the version, if you added expert settings to the config file and restarted the service, but then opened YAST, it still opened in the other mode, and you lost some of that configuration. Okay, so again, just as a heads up, if you go from non-expert to expert by modifying the config file yourself, pay attention when you open YAST the next time. Did you lose any of those settings? Okay, I would cancel out of that as opposed to saving on the way out, because when you save on the way out, it's going to save what it can see, and for whatever reason, it wasn't able to see the configuration. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Yes? No? Maybe? Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say no here. I'm going to close YAST. I'm going to go into...
Are you saying if you go from expert back to simple, you might lose stuff? Or
if you go from expert, yes. Okay, and when that might happen... etc. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to I'm going to insert here shared network, and I'm going to call it something original like shared. How's that? Okay, and 1 set of squiggly brackets. And then I'm going to have the first subnet. I'm just going to kind of use some indenting here. And then I'm going to have, and I'm going to have to check the syntax, obviously, when I'm done. I'm going to do subnet 192.168.233.0 net mask. I'm not going to set up a default lease time or a max lease time, so that would simply mean that it would use the global, but just to save myself some typing. And I would need 1 more set of brackets here. I think this is good. So we've got the shared network, and then we've got that, and then that. That should work. Okay, so now I've created, in essence, a shared network or a superscope, okay, that has 2 subnets within it. So I'm going to go out to the command prompt. I'm going to check my syntax. And it's not okay. Okay. Notice it tells me it is not okay. So let's see. Checking syntax. Usually it tells you the line number. For information, internet failed.
Oh, it says bad range. It said bad range. Address 192.
Oh, okay. That's why, because I went with 232 instead of 233.
You put 232.
Yeah, I put the wrong IP. DHCP.com. Okay, so down here, I specified to 232. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's check the syntax again. There we go. Okay. And now I'm going to do a restart. And now I'm going to go into YAST. Okay. Because it might just be fine this time around. Okay. But when I go into YAST and I go into network services and DHCP, it should open now in expert mode. Okay. And it did. Okay. So in earlier versions, it opened in normal mode, and then if you saved on exit, it wiped out all of your expert settings because it didn't recognize them when you were in normal mode. Okay. So this is expert mode, and you can see down here. There's my shared network. There's my subnet. If I want to make any modifications, I can edit. I can come in here. I can add values to this, so I can come out and add. There's a whole bunch of settings that you can add and specify their values. And again, that you could make changes to either one of the subnets. The shared network itself you could make changes to. Actually, it's not showing any values here, so I'm not sure why. But again, this is what happens when you make modifications to the comp file and open YAST. It automatically will go into expert mode. Okay. If I had attempted to do it from within YAST, and the way I could test that would be to get rid of that, right? I'm going to get rid of the shared network now. I'm going to get rid of the second subnet. And check my syntax. I'm going to restart the service. I'm going to go into YAST and DHCP. And notice now it's back to normal mode, okay? So here's where if I wanted to go to expert settings, and now when I say yes, it's going to open in this mode, okay? And here's where, actually this is where I think, if my memory serves me right, I could not figure out, I could add the shared network. So when you click on add, you can add the shared network, but I couldn't seem to move the existing subnet into it. Okay, so again, I mean, I could come in here and create a shared network, and maybe it will work fine this time. But if I do shared, I'll call it shared, and let's say I click on add here, I'm not seeing any subnets here. I think I would have to add them at that previous screen. You can see that I typically would have done this at the command prompt.
Yeah,
okay, shared network is here. Notice the subnet is not within it.
Click edit now.
Okay, but if I click edit here, it brings me to the same spot. Yeah, that was the issue. I think if I dig down in my notes, I probably say I had to actually delete the subnet and add it within the shared. I didn't find it was very intuitive. But my point is again, you can use either method. If you know the syntax, then, you know, I think editing the .conf file is easier. Okay, and then checking the syntax and restarting. Okay. one last thing is if we look at, I probably like just finished that with bad settings, right? Did I have a shared network that's not even, yeah, I have an empty shared network there, you can see. Actually, I wonder if I do, yeah, it doesn't like that. So I'm going to VI that file. It's interesting, don't you think, that it allowed me to exit the YAS component without errors when the file is not properly configured? I don't know.
You were able to exit your comp file. It's just until you did the check.
Yeah, but I would think that YAS should be checking. Don't you think? Don't you think the graphical interface on exit would be checking my syntax or checking the settings? I would think, but you know, hey, I don't write this code. Okay, now I'm going to check the syntax again, and it's okay. I'm going to restart the service. Okay. Just one last thing, and that's it for today, is looking at the Journalctl. We looked at Journalctl last semester, so I just want to focus the output on the DHCP service. Okay, so for example, if I do, I'm on the server, I'm going to type journalctl, -u, remember -u allows you to identify the service. You only want to view information about a particular service, dhcpd.service. If I do that, it's going to show me any lines from my DHCP, from my log file that are DHCP related. Okay, you can see what starting the service. You can see probably renewed leases in here somewhere, stopped and started, and I'm not seeing anything about leases though. Wrote 0 leases to file. But more specifically, I think that what can be practical when you're troubleshooting is if you use that -f parameter. So let me see if I can do this side by side here. So I'm going to do the -f parameter, and then I'm going to come out to my client machine. I'm going to try to keep that side by side there for a second. I'm in here. I'm going to do an if down eth0. The -f on Journalctl, remember, kind of leaves the file open and leaves it live, so you can see entries as they're being added. So again, I've released the IP address, and if I do an if up, notice the activity that's happening over here on the left. Okay, you can see SUSE server you request the acknowledgement packet. You can actually see the communication between the two. So that can be helpful if you're troubleshooting a problem and like there's nothing happening in that file and something's not right. Is the service configured wrong? Is there a syntax error in the did you forget to check the syntax? Is it not configured properly? So this is definitely you know, a way to monitor the activity on the server side. Oops. A way to monitor the activity on the server side. You want to see the command, right? So while you're on the client and you're trying to troubleshoot a problem, what's happening? Why is the DHCP server not receiving these requests or whatever? That would be a good way to troubleshoot that particular problem. Okay. I have a note here, and I'm trying to remember what I did to do that. Depending, and I can't remember the type of error, depending on the type of error that you have within I'm going to try that. I'm going to break out of this. I'm going to cancel this, Control-C out of there. I'm going to VI the dhcp.conf file. And I'm going to intentionally put an error in here. I'll just put subnet without anything after it, okay, just to see kind of what happens. I am going to check the syntax just to confirm that obviously that we're probably going to have an error here. Okay, so there's an error, but what I want to see is if it will not restart. certain errors, it will still allow the service to restart. So let's see. No, so this is exactly what I was hoping for. Okay, so notice it actually comes back and it tells you that the job failed because the control process exited with error code. See system status DHCP. So you check the status, but also it tells you to look for the specific details in Journalctl -x by typing that. If I type Journalctl -xe, okay, basically that is showing me, my memory serves me right, the contents of a log file. Okay, so this is a separate log file. I'm going to quit this and I'm going to cat this file that I think it is to see if this is log/rc.dhcpd.log. And it, no, I'm sorry. That message, I knew that my message to myself didn't make all that much sense. See right here, it says, please see the log file. Okay, and all you're seeing in the log file is the same exact message that you got when the service wouldn't start. That was the point that I was going to try to make. Okay, but the fact that, again, there's an error, if there's a, depending on the error, if it may not be able to restart the service. So if the service isn't started, and at this point, let's see if it is, systemctl status DHCPD YSTEM. So this isn't even running. Okay, it says it failed. So if I go to the client machine right now, if I do that command that I executed earlier with the -f, okay, so that leaves that open. I go out to the client and I do an if up, okay. I shouldn't have to down and up. I should be able to just up. And absolutely nothing happens at the server, okay, that would be some kind of an indication that there's no communication happening here between my client and my server. So that maybe my DHCP service isn't running. In fact, it isn't. So again, just pointing out that this command here can be helpful. When we look at DNS, we'll see the same thing, that it can be helpful to see what activity is happening on the server so that it can help troubleshoot that particular problem. So again, it's going to say setup in progress for a really long time now, because right now it cannot communicate with the DHCP server because the service is not running, okay, because of the error. So if I fix that, oops. Oh, I'm on the client. I'm like, what? Why isn't there anything in that file? There is no such file on the client. I just restarted it without checking the syntax because I'm pretty sure that that was fine. And then again, now obviously if I go out to my client and I do an if up eth0, we should see some activity. I'm doing if up without the if down. I'm pretty sure I can do that. Well, we'll find out, won't we? It says it's up. I didn't see any activity though, did you?
Does it break the journal live if you run commands over it?
Does it?
Or do you have to run it again?
Oh, because I ran the command after I ran the Journalctl after I executed the command. That could be it. Because I mean,
also do the down and then up.
yeah, I know, but right now what he's saying is I actually executed the command before I started the journal.
Right.
Okay, so if I do it now with just if up, just out of curiosity, there we go. We saw the activity now. So that's probably what it was. And it's given it the .75 address. Interesting that it's not giving it back 99. Anyway,
Does it
so
start at the beginning of the range?
yeah, but the fact that at one point it had 99, and it's like Windows. If you ever tried to like, you know, it's like as long as it had it, it's like, you know, you almost have to like take it out of the pool, renew at the client so that you can get a new address. And that's what it's been doing. It's been keeping the 99 address ever since I gave it a fixed address because that's in the pool. But that's it, guys. That's it for DHCP, so I will be posting 2 homework assignments for you. Next week we'll be doing lab time. Okay?